Welcome to First Chapter Friday. I'm Amy from the Sparks Library. Today, I'll be reading a chapter from the book, The Hero's Guide to Saving Your Kingdom by Christopher Healy, with pictures by Todd Harris. The publisher is Walden Pond Press. First, let me give you a summary of what our story is about. Prince Liam, Prince Frederick, Prince Duncan, Prince Gustav. You've never heard of them, have you? These are the princes who saved Sleeping Beauty, Cinderella, Snow White, and Rapunzel, respectively. And yet, thanks to those lousy bards who wrote the tales, you likely know them only as Prince Charming. But all of this is about to change. Rejected by their princesses and cast out of their castles, Liam, Frederick, Duncan, and Gustav stumble upon an evil plot that could endanger each of their kingdoms. Now it's up to them to triumph over the various shortcomings, take on trolls, bandits, dragons, witches, and other assorted terrors, and become the heroes no one ever thought they could be. Let's begin our story. A Hero's Guide to Saving Your Kingdom. Chapter 1. Prince Charming misplaces his bride. Frederick wasn't always helpless. There was a time when he aspired to become a hero, but it seemed it wasn't meant to be. From the moment he was born and immediately placed into the delicate swishiness of a pure silk bassinet, Prince Frederick led a life of comfort. As heir to the throne of the very wealthy nation of Harmonia, he grew up with an army of servants standing ready to pamper him in every way imaginable. While learning to crawl, he was fitted with lamb's wool knee pads to keep his baby soft skin from getting scuffed. When he wanted to play hide and seek, butlers and valets would hide in the most obvious places, behind a feather, under a napkin, so that the boy wouldn't have to work too hard to find them. Pretty much anything young Frederick could have wanted or needed was handed to him on a silver platter, literally. The only thing Frederick had to do in return was live the life of a proper gentleman. He was allowed to attend as many poetry readings, ballroom dances, and 12-course luncheons as he wanted. But he was forbidden to take part in any activity that would be considered remotely risky or dangerous. Appearances were very important to Frederick's father, King Wilberforce, who vowed that no one in his family would ever again suffer the cruel mockery that had been heaped upon his great-grandfather, King Charles the Chicken-Poxed. "Not a scar, not a bruise, not a blemish," was the motto of King Wilberforce. And he went to extreme measures to keep his son away from anything that might give him so much as a scratch. He even had Frederick's pencils pre-doled. For most of his early years, Frederick was perfectly happy to skip out on pastimes like tree climbing, twisted ankles, hiking, poison ivy, or embroidery, pointy needles. King Wilberforce's warnings about the hazards of such endeavors sank in good and deep. But at the tender age of 7, Frederick was inspired to try something daring. He was in his private classroom being taught to write his name with fancy curly-cued letters, when a commotion down the hall caused his tutor to cut the lesson short. Frederick followed his tutor down to the palace gates, where many of the servants had gathered to gawk at a visiting knight. The old warrior, who was battered and exhausted from a recent bout with a dragon, had staggered up to the palace seeking food and shelter. The king invited the weary visitor inside. This was the first knight Frederick had ever seen in real life, and frankly, even the ones he had read about in books weren't very exciting. His favorite bedtime story was Sir Bertram the Dainty and the Quest for the Enchanted Salad Fork. During the knight's short stay, a fascinated Frederick followed him everywhere, listening to his tales of ogre battles, goblin wars, and bandit chases. There was a look in the man's eyes that Frederick had never seen before. Frederick could sense the knight's thirst for thrills, his yearning for action. The knight was a man who thrived on adventure the way Frederick thrived on tea cakes. That evening, after the knight departed, Frederick asked his father if he could take sword fighting lessons. The king dismissed his request with a smile. "Swords are sharp, my boy, and I need a son with both ears attached." Young Frederick was undaunted. The next day, he asked his father if he could take a shot at wrestling instead. King Wilberforce shook his head. "You're what they call petite, Frederick. You'll have your spine snapped in an instant." The day after that, Frederick requested a spot on the jousting team. "That's more dangerous than the other two combined," the king moaned disapprovingly. "You'll be skewered like a cocktail weenie." "Archery?" Frederick asked. "Eyes poked out," the king insisted. "Martial arts?" "Bones broken." "Mountaineering?" "Eyes broken, bones poked out." By the end of the week, King Wilberforce couldn't take it anymore. He needed to put a stop to Frederick's thrill-seeking dreams. He decided to set his son up for a fall. "Father, can I try spelunking?" Frederick asked eagerly. "Cave exploration? You'll fall into a bottomless pit," the king chided. Then he changed his tone. "But you can try animal training if you'd like." "Really?" Frederick was stunned and thrilled. "You mean with wild animals, not hamsters or goldfish?" The king nodded. "You don't think I'll be eaten alive?" Frederick asked. "Oh, I fear that you will be. But if you're so determined to put your life at risk, perhaps I shouldn't stand in your way," his father said, weaving his deception. The next day, with his heart racing, Frederick was led down a winding basement corridor to a storeroom in which all the old coats of arms, spare scepters, and crates of outgrown baby clothes had been shoved up against the walls to make room for an enormous cage. Inside that cage, a pacing, panting tiger. The animal let out a low growl as soon as it saw the young prince. "Wow, I didn't know we'd start with something so big," Frederick said, considerably less eager than he had been a minute earlier. "Are you ready for this, Your Highness?" the animal's trainer asked. Frederick barely had time to nod before the trainer slid back the bolt and let the cage door fall open. The trainer uttered a quick word to the tiger, and the big cat burst out into the room, rushing straight at Frederick. Frederick screamed and ran. The giant tiger, easily 3 times his size, dashed after the boy. Frederick darted among the crates of tarnished goblets and out-of-tune lutes, looking for some place to hide. "Why aren't you stopping it?" he shouted at the trainer. "I can't stop it," the trainer replied. "It's a wild animal. Your father told you this would be dangerous." Frederick ducked under a heavy wooden table, but the tiger swatted it away as if it were nothing more than a piece of dandelion fluff. Frederick scrambled across the floor in an attempt to get away from the beast, but was soon backed up against a stack of rolled tapestries. There was nowhere left for him to go. With tears running down his face, Frederick shrieked as he saw the tiger's open mouth coming straight at him. To find out what happens between Frederick and the tiger, and to read about the other princes and princesses, look for your copy of The Hero's Guide to Saving Your Kingdom. There are 2 additional titles in the series: The Hero's Guide to Storming the Castle and The Hero's Guide to Being an Outlaw. Don't forget to sign up for Summer Reading Adventure, Imagine Your Story. at washocountyllibrary.us. It runs from June 1st to July 31st. Happy reading!